Hello, pre-sales folks. What a session to start our leadership summit with, right? So a lot of interesting analogies. I love the energy and engagement that was coming through. So let's keep them coming. So this session is going to be on the leadership dilemma. All of us have been there at that stage, right? So to take the leap or not. And there are a lot of questions that runs in our head to take the leap or not. What do we miss out on? What do we gain? So look no further. We have an amazing set of panelists with us today who are going to be helping us, giving analogies, insights, and whatnot, right? So, well, first off, to start, I'm Karthik. And a couple of years back, I have also been contemplating whether to take the leap or not. And right now, I have been leading a team of fantastic SEs for the Europe and the UK market for the Freshworks organization. So with that, I'll also pass on the mic to our panelists today. Probably we'll start with Karsten and proceed to Wendy and Maria. So I'll let them introduce, and probably if you guys can also share your journey into leadership, how that happened into pre-sales management, that would be fantastic.
Thank you. Hey, everyone. My name is Karsten Cheers. I'm currently not in a leadership role, but previously, my last employer, Rapid7, I led our global team of threat intelligence subject matter experts. I'm currently at XM Cyber, where I am an individual contributor leading the Southeast section of the U.S. For pre-sales with XM Cyber. But I started in IT operations. I was on the customer side. I did the work, was approached by a recruiter asking me if I wanted to be in pre-sales. So I made a decision that changed the rest of my life. And I accepted the invitation, went through the interview, and here I am. And I don't think I want to go back to the customer side because I enjoy pre-sales too much.
And hi, everyone. My name is Wendy McHenry. I am currently a senior director at CData Software in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I am the global head of pre-sales and customer success here, and I also am the chair of Pre-Sales Collective WISE. I have been a pre-sales leader for a long time now, but before I was in pre-sales, I was a leader of development teams, and then I was a leader in IT before that, in financial services. And my training is not in computer science. I actually am a statistician. That's how I got started in my career. My very first job out of school was actually as a statistical analyst doing consulting and marketing research. And I think it's pretty common to see people come into pre-sales from all different kinds of paths. And for me, I happen to have been a leader in other fields before becoming and moving into pre-sales. But my shift into pre-sales came actually from the fact that I worked in financial services, and then I moved into a role where I was able to work as an SE for financial services. So that actually is a path I've seen a lot of people take as well. They have some sort of deep industry experience and they bring that into pre-sales. So I look forward to the discussion today. And Maria.
Thanks, Wendy. And hi, everyone. Nice to be with you all today. I actually used to be a university recruiter. So like Carson and Wendy mentioned, getting into pre-sales is something a lot of us fall into. And how I got into it is similar to what Wendy said. I had industry expert in the HR tech, recruiting tech industry and field. And so a startup in Chicago was looking for folks that had pretty deep industry knowledge there. And how I got into management was sort of by accident in a way. One of my managers at the time was going on maternity leave and she needed an interim manager. At the time, I was not the most tenured, but the one who was sort of the one that everyone leaned on for help wherever I could provide advice. So I naturally took on that role. She decided to not come back into that role. As you may learn in this panel today, work-life balance is very important, but as a manager, it looks a little different. And so I stepped into that role full time. I actually went back and forth from being a manager into an IC. I had a unique opportunity to join another company to start a pre-sales team. And I love, getting in the weeds. I do love the role of being an SC. So I have gone back and forth from a manager, an IC, and now back to manager. I'm currently a manager of solutions engineering here at HubSpot, where I manage a team on the corporate side. So that's a little bit about my story.
Fantastic. I think one of the biggest strengths of pre-sales is all of us come from diverse backgrounds, right? And I think that adds the power to what we do on a daily basis. So that's fantastic, right? So one of the logical steps that each of you would have come across is to take the leap into management, right? So for now, for people at that same point where people are contemplating if they will have to take that leap or not, what advice do each of you have for them from your perspective, from your analogies? Could we start off with Maria?
Yeah, so if you're contemplating taking that leap to management, know that that is not always the logical next step, even though it may seem that way. I personally have gone back and forth, but if you're at that crossroads, ask yourself, are you motivated by seeing others succeed? Are you motivated by cheering someone on the sidelines or helping them troubleshoot kind of where they're at to get to that next step, right? Those are the things that I believe are key signs that maybe leadership is for you. If you're more motivated by the work that you do, being that technical expert, being that person that everyone goes to for expertise, the IC track is certainly one that is a great one. And I think it's something to consider, where is it today that you find happiness and success and you feel like you've really been able to make an impact? And both are super great tracks, whether it is leading at folks or being that technical expert or that subject matter expert in your field.
And I love what you said, Maria. I think you really should do some honest self-reflection, right? Be honest with yourself about those career goals that you have. So for example, one answer I have heard is, I want to continue becoming as deeply technical as possible. It's just that's not going to happen when you move into pre-sales leadership, right? There's just a point where you're not going to be the super deep subject matter expert anymore. That's your expertise now becomes different. People leadership is a different career path. I think that's something a lot of people in pre-sales maybe don't think about, it's two different careers. Being an IC, SE versus a pre-sales leadership in a pre-sales leadership role. And if you don't enjoy coaching and mentoring others, people leadership won't be a good fit for you. But if you're energized by coaching others, like if you get that opportunity to help others and you find you really love that, that's a good sign that people leadership might be a good fit for you.
Yeah, I would agree. The the other thing or the way I looked at it is similar to the player coach analogy. Like, do you want to be the one on the court, or do you want to be the one on the sidelines helping those that are on the court? For me, where I am now, to be honest, I can do both, but I enjoy being on the sidelines a little bit more. I have ripped out our biggest competitor. I have closed those big opportunities, and it's great. I love it. But to be honest, I may not necessarily get that same level of excitement if it's me doing it as I would if I help someone on my team do it. So the final part I'll add to that is, don't think by you going into management, you're no longer going to do individual contributor work, because you are. Someone's going to go on vacation or be sick, and you may have to cover a demo or set up a POC. That's still going to happen. So don't think management is a way to wash your hands from it, but you'll do it less, and it's going to be more about you empowering your team versus you being that technical expert. Excuse me.
Perfect. That was well put, right? I think especially what Wendy mentioned about if you feel energized by coaching and helping people, right? So let's be honest, people management is definitely a energy consuming process, right? So I think we'll set that straight. So with that, probably Carsten, let me ask you this, right? So when you made that transition into people management, what was that surprise that caught you off guard?
So at first it was a surprise that didn't make me happy, but I had to look at it in a different lens, and that is um, the lack of power and control you actually have. Because a lot of people think, oh, once I'm in management, I'm going to change the way we do things, and then you realize, oh, I can't do that. Oh, that's what the vice president does. Okay, so I just got it. All right, cool. Right, so it's a little different, and that can be kind of set you back because you have all these lofty ideas in these programs, but you can't just easily implement it. But what helped me realize was I don't have control and responsibility for everything, but I do have control and responsibility for my team. My team, I actually can influence and impact. And once I accepted that, management, I don't want to say it became easier, but it became more fulfilling. So instead of me saying, well, hey, account execs need to do this and marketing needs to do that, that's put that to the side. Let me help my team do the most with the little that we do have. And then that will influence account execs to look at things differently, for marketing to kind of maybe change their message because they realize the way that my team is doing it is actually working. So that was probably the biggest surprise, that you don't have all the power that you think, but the things that you do have power over, you can, change the world.
100% Carsten. I think we all absolutely agree with what you were saying. So probably since we are talking about the surprises that come our way once we transition into people management, Maria, do you have any advice for folks on what they can do or think about when they want to move into management?
Yeah, a few things come to mind. One, talk to your current manager and ask them, what's their experience been like? What advice do they have for them? If you're not comfortable asking your direct manager, ask another mentor. You have many, I'm sure, that you're going to meet here in this next few hours and in the breakout rooms, but pick their brain on, was that the right move for them? What are the things to look out for? After you have that conversation, you're thinking, okay, this is the path I want to go down. See if your company has a team lead program or a mentorship program that you can be a part of. Raise your hand for that. If your company does not, I think to start to do the job that you want to do. So become that mentor. Talk to somebody that is starting their career in pre-sales, and maybe you've been doing this for a while and want to help guide their career, and that is an organic mentorship opportunity right there. And so I think it all starts with that mentorship coaching opportunity, really. And if you can, and if you are fortunate enough to have a program that's a formal layout at your company, certainly apply or get considered for that role.
Perfect. So that's a good list of advices. So what we've also seen is that when people aspire to be managers, it also comes from different roles and functions as well, right? It might not just be people inspired by people management and solution engineering or in pre-sales, right? So Wendy, I'm going to ask you this, right? So when it comes to people management, how is that different from other roles versus a people management and solution engineering?
Sure. So you heard me say I've been a people leader in different roles.
Yeah.
People leadership, the actual people part, that's been very similar for me across leadership roles. But pre-sales management differed for me. I was just thinking through a few of the areas. So one of the challenges is the challenge of the job and of being an SE in itself. You're part technical coach and part sales coach. And when I've been in other leadership roles, I've had one primary focus area. So to me, it's harder to coach the art of pre-sales, right? At least when I was new to pre-sales management, you're like, wow, the art of pre-sales, that's so different than a black and white technical training. right? That's a very, very different approach. And pre-sales management requires a coordination across a broad variety of roles in our go-to-market space. So you're coordinating with sales leadership, product leadership, support leadership, marketing leadership, professional services. Where when I've been in other leadership roles, it's been like I'm managing development teams, I'm working with other development teams. And that's the world I'm in. I'm not having to coordinate across so many business units. And one thing really to think about, look, let's be honest here, pre-sales is a hard job. It can be a stressful job. And sometimes the best thing you can do as a pre-sales manager is to support your team. You're supporting them emotional support, you're doing morale building. Sometimes you're just removing roadblocks to get things out of their way, but it's having that respect that it's a stressful job and what can you do to take that stress level down and help your team through it. For many of us, we're in fourth quarter. Fourth quarter is a really stressful time. And then finally, I just wanted to say in pre-sales management, similar to what Karsten was saying about the power you have as a leader, so much of what we do in pre-sales is tied to decisions made in the sales team that we don't have control over. So for example, staffing. Our staffing in pre-sales is going to be directly tied to sales staffing and the sales initiatives that then need staffing, right? And sometimes those decisions are they're just frankly outside of our scope and our control.
Well put, Wendy. So we have a question in the Q&A. So what if someone as an IC wants to become a manager? I think it's very similar to the question that was asked in our previous session as well. But what if someone wants to become a manager, but they are being pulled back by peers and their managers as well, right? So how do you navigate through it? What are your perspectives?
Sure. So I'm happy to jump in here and say, sometimes that's the curse of being really good at your job. Right? Like you're so great as being an SE that's hard to let that go. And it might be working with your manager or with a mentor to come up with what is the plan? Okay, what is a 6-month plan? And part of that plan might be, okay, I'm a super senior accomplished SE. How can I develop other people to be like me so that I can move into that leadership role? So if my manager is really reliant on me because I'm doing so much, I need to spread that around and help coach and develop others. And then to Maria's point, part of it is doing the job and showing that you can do the job. And it might be volunteering for more internal facing projects, more strategic initiatives internally, doing more coaching of your team. Anyway, I'd love to hear from Maria and Karsten, your other thoughts on that question.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm a fan of, asking that question back of what are those gaps? What are those skills that I don't have today that, are holding me back from that next step? And, documenting it. Like a lot of us, we've been at that crossroads where, to get to your next goal, you have to do X, Y, Z. I think to have the upper hand in that, certainly document, certainly get that information, and then show the milestones that you're making. Give those proactive updates of the things that you're working on. You have to be your own advocate. No one's going to know that off to the side you're doing these mentorship projects or that you're building a playbook, right? You have to advocate for yourself and share all the good things that you're doing, and have those periodic check-ins. Ask the permission of your manager. Can we have a weekly check-in about this specific topic, aside from our one-on-one, to make sure that I'm on track to get there. And if you find that you're not getting the support, right, is that organization the right one for you? I think at the end of the day, we need to think about ourselves and our career. And there's so many really great companies and organizations that you can work for that can lift you up and help you to get to where you want to go. So I think it also is that crossroads of, is this the right organization for me to reach my career goals? I'll popcorn it over to Karsten.
I agree. I'm struggling with this question because I don't fully understand how someone can hold you back. And I hope this doesn't sound prideful, but I'm not attached to anyone but me. I'm not attached to my manager. I'm not attached to the VP or the team. I'm attached to me. So I refuse to let someone hold me back. If I'm doing a great job as an individual contributor, and I'm defining great job as I figured out that if I'm selling to this type of sector or vertical, then I need to do this. If it's that one, I do that. Then I've created processes, and now I'm going to share their process without being asked to the rest of my team, because that's showing leadership. So I'm going to start working as if I'm already a manager, so to speak, and then so it just makes sense. If my manager wants me to stay in that IC role because, oh man, Carson, if you move up, the team's going to fail. Well, you know what? Let me go ahead and give you the deuces now, because I'm going to go somewhere that's not going to try to prevent me, right? So I know it's easier said than done, and you know the job market is still kind of flaky and shaky, but you just have to get this understanding that I am not going to be held back. I am going to continue to improve, because if you don't appreciate that and promote me, somebody else will. And I'm going to be good regardless, right? So you just have to have that level of confidence within yourself.
I'm loving this, folks. Absolutely. Such truth bombs and very well put and articulated, right? So let me flip this switch a bit, right? So, Carsten, you mentioned that you have moved back to being an IC, right? So there are also days where, as people managers for solution engineering, we also long to become ICs, or there's always a question of what if, correct? So what actually drove you to make the decision of moving back to an IC? What was that thought process?
Yeah, so to be honest, I didn't make the decision to move back to an IC. I made the decision to try something new. I enjoy leadership, I enjoy management, and I hope to get back to that arena soon. But I I realized that you can be a manager, you can be a senior manager, you can be a director at this company, and it's totally different than a manager or director or senior director at this company, right? You can be a manager at a very large established company, and management's going to look like this. But if you go to a startup or a smaller company, management's going to look like that. And for me, I love my previous employer. I love what I was doing, but it was large, and it was harder to be creative. It was harder to be impactful. It was harder to introduce new ideas and run with it, because it's gonna sound negative, but it's not. But so much red tape, so many silos, and I didn't want that for me. I want to be able to be more freely creative, and it just so happens that doing that, I could get there by being an individual contributor again. So that's why I did it. The lesson learned is I would encourage anyone to realize that you can buy a sneaker from Nike's, Adidas, Walmart brand, whatever, but each of them are going to define sneaker a little differently. So you got to find out what fits best on your feet. And that's what it is for me. It fits better at a smaller company that's more innovative than a larger company that's not necessarily not innovative, but they're more by, hey, this is how we've always done it, and we're going to continue doing that.
Fantastic, Carsten. So we have a question. So I probably open this up for all the three of you. So there's a question on how often do you suggest an IC to be working in a company before they decide to move into a management role? So probably another question that we also wanted to probably discuss was, if someone wants to take a lead into the management, right, or leap into management, how do they get started with the process?
Okay, sure. I can take a pass from my perspective. There is no hard and fast rule for me when I'm looking at candidates, right? I will say some companies do have a policy. Like I worked at one company, you are not permitted to even be considered for another role until you'd been there a year. So sometimes it's good to try to understand what the policies are. I've worked at places where there's concern about poaching talent from other teams. So, and then there's policies around what that looks like and all of those things. For me, I moved into a team lead role, moving into my new company pretty quickly, but I had people leadership experience. I had been doing similar jobs in the industry for a while. I will also say age has nothing to do with it at all. So I don't want you to think of that. Do not let that hold you back. I have a 25-year-old daughter, and I will say I think she shows up leaderly, even though she's not in a leadership position herself, right? So I think it's listening to all the advice you're getting today to understand what are the things I need to do to. I tell my team it's when luck meets preparedness. So get yourself prepared. Do the things that you need to do to brush up your skills. What are the areas you feel like I need to work on? And then when those leadership opportunities arise, the luck, right? Then you're prepared and you're ready. You have your portfolio to show. I have built up these skills. These are the results I've delivered. This is the people leadership I've shown. Because again, as you've heard us talk about today, you can be a leader no matter your title. So think about, am I showing up leaderly right now in this moment? That is what I like to see when I'm looking at candidates.
Maria, you want to go and then I'll go?
Yeah, sure. So I guess tactically, if you will see 1 to 2 years, but as long as you've had those experiences of like dealing with a difficult peer or managing a difficult project, right? Make sure to have those experiences documented so that you kind of have those ready to go when you are asked, or share them proactively so that folks when they are thinking of who to promote next, or there's an opening, who should we consider, they've already heard these stories. And then my biggest advice is socialize it early and often. Like if this is a path you want to take, mention it to your manager right away. There might not be an opening today, but you never know. Things change all the time. And I know when I was in that position, I remember telling my manager back at my previous company, I wanted to take on that role. We weren't hiring at the time, but as soon as that rec opened up, he had asked me if I was still interested. And so it sort of happened really quickly, because it was already sort of a nugget he already had in his ear, something he already knew about. So I would say do all, as Wendy was saying, do all that you can right now, and then socialize it early and often.
Agreed. To be honest, I don't have anything really additional to add. I'm just going to echo what has already been said. You don't wait until a position is posted before you start performing. So again, you can start to be a leader at the low. You can be an associate pre-sales engineer and do things that are leader-like, right? Because the way you know if you're a leader, you just look behind and see if someone is following you. And once you see if someone's following you, you ask yourself the question, am I worth being followed? Is where I'm going worthwhile for people to do it the way I'm doing so that they can get there sooner? So I don't really look at it as time, but I can tell you that I'm a competitor. And if someone wants to say, oh, well, our policy is that you have to be here for a year, I'm going to make it challenging for you to want to keep that policy. I'm going to work in such a way where people are going to say, hey, this whole 1 year thing was kind of stupid. Like we need to take care of this man now, or this person now, because they're already leading and we're going to lose out on good talent because we're stuck for a year. Why did we even come up with that? So that's just, I think, the competitiveness in me. I love making people rethink the way things were always done, because you can eat unhealthy for 3 years. That's the way it's always been done. That doesn't make it right. It just means you know what you want from McDonald's now. So I would rather work in such a way where you have to change their thinking so that they can change your title.
Perfect. So talking about titles and transition into leadership, right? So a lot of organizations have something called as team lead or lead, right? So there's always conversations around what does this lead do? Is that a bridge? Is that an IC role or a PM role, right? So Wendy, can you offer insights on what essentially differentiates a people manager versus a lead, or where do they overlap? How do people see that?
Sure. And team leads at some companies are formally defined roles and titles. And then I've worked at companies where they're not. It's an informal title. You're still an IC, but you're performing team lead responsibilities. So your mileage may vary on that perspective. For me, the primary goal of a team lead is to give people a little bit more responsibility, to give them an opportunity to see what it's like and sort of try on the job before they get the management job, right? Typically, they're a high performer who has had great results, but I'm expecting a team lead is doing mentoring and coaching of more junior SEs. It's also an opportunity for me to make sure I'm coaching that team lead into people management skills and for them to see if that really works for them. I will say in my experience, one big difference has been the HR component. At the companies I've worked at, the team lead was not responsible for performance reviews or performance discussions. And let's be honest, those can be uncomfortable and difficult. And some people find they really don't want to do those, but unfortunately, they're part and parcel of being a manager. That I have had people report to me that were team leads that were like, I'm sorry, I never want to do the HR component. And wow, that broke my heart. I understand, right? And again, it's being honest with yourself about what you can and cannot do and what you do and do not enjoy about the job. I have had tremendous HR partners. So as difficult as that is, I love that part. I love having those continuous feedback discussions. And team lead is a way for you to learn how to give some of that constructive feedback, right? Another component of being a team lead is becoming a pre-sales manager. You might still act as a player coach. You heard Carson say that earlier, player coach, where you're both managing people, but taking an active role as an SE on opportunities. And you're having to find the balance between those two things. And being a team lead is exactly, you're doing those, you're getting practice at that, practice at being a player coach. And I will be honest with you, that is hard. And it's a balance where you're like, some weeks I'm doing more leadership responsibilities, some weeks I'm doing more opportunity work, and I'm not getting it paid. And honestly, I feel like no one feels like they're getting that right 100% of the time. And that's okay. Cut yourself some slack. But to me, those are the biggest differences I see between team lead and pre-sales management. I don't know if Maria and Karsten, if you have others from your lived experience.
Yeah, I echo everything you said, Wendy. I think it's a great way to just dip your toe into the leadership pond, if you will, and not necessarily have to take the whole thing on. It's a great way to know, like, is this for me? Is it not? It can feel a little overwhelming. I'm not gonna lie. I think the team lead role can feel like you're on the border of IC and management and trying to do all of it. So just give yourself grace if you are in that position. Don't try to boil the ocean. You know, you're only in that role for a very short period of time, hopefully. Have that expectation set from the get-go of how long you're going to do it, because the worst thing that can happen is that you're in that role for so long and you're neither an IC nor are you a manager, or are you both, right? And it gets confusing. So really get that figured out from the get-go, but know that that is such a great opportunity to know if this is for you. And it's less about being a manager, right, and more about being a leader. So look at it from that lens. Like, do I want to lead? Do I want to motivate others? Do I see success through others and that being something that motivates me? Or do I actually prefer being that subject matter expert, that technical expert that everyone goes to? And so take that time to know that that's a really privileged spot to be able to pick from the two.
Yeah, I think team lead is such a great opportunity, again, for you to kind of dip your feet in the water, because you have some of the responsibilities of a manager, but none of the authority, because you can't fire, you can't promote, you can't hire, but you have to work in such a way where if you tell the team something, they're not going to question it. Like, okay, cool. All right, Carson told me to do it, so I'm going to do it. It wasn't Karsten's and my boss, but Carson told me, but I still view him as a leader. And that's just such great experience, because when I was in management, I never managed from a place of authority. Like, I didn't say, either you do this or you're going to get fired. I never did that. I did it from a way like, hey, if you do this, you're going to benefit by having this done, right? Or your account exec is going to be more willing to listen. The customer is more willing to buy if you do it this way, right? So it was from a peer standpoint, versus a boss standpoint. So if you can master that as a team lead, then you're just highly increasing your chances as a manager.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. All good points. Thank you, folks. So I would also probably ask this question to Maria. So we also have a very relevant question here. So the question would be, what advice would you give to a newly promoted pre-sales manager, right? So the question on the Q&A is also that what are some tips that on how we can become less of a micromanager? Because I feel all the new people managers, I think they inevitably fall into the trap of micromanagement, and they will have to work their way out of it. So apart from micromanagement and how to overcome it, what are your other advices for all the new people managers, Maria?
Yeah, that's a great question. And if you're getting promoted internally, so these were your peers, sorry, these were your peers, and now you are their manager, know that you are going through one of the toughest transitions that I've ever had to face. I know probably Wendy and Carson can agree that one of the toughest transitions is being a peer and then a manager to that same team. So give yourself grace. Know that this is not going to feel normal, or it's not going to feel easy for probably a 3 to maybe 6 months, because you are, part of the cohort that is now taking the charge. And so you'll have to slowly let go of the reins. So I think that some of the earlier symptoms of new managers is that micromanaging component, because you are so familiar with the role, you know how to do it, you know the answers to all the technical questions, you were that go-to person. I mean, probably a month ago, you were that President's Club winner and the SC that landed the biggest deals, right? You have to learn to let that go. And you are now in the role of empowering through your team. And so you're no longer going to see your name in bright lights, for better or for worse, in those deals, but know that your impact is going to be through your team. And so some of the things to let go for the micromanaging part are just trust your team, right? You were in that role before. Think about how it must have felt to micromanage your team, and what it was like to have a micromanager. So trust your team, number one. Number two, have that now division and boundary between the IC and yourself, right? Like, you have to give them the room and the space to grow as an IC, and you have to give yourself the space to grow as a manager, and that takes time, right? It's not going to be tomorrow, it's not going to be a month from now, it can be a while. And then some of the other challenges that I see as a newly promoted manager is feeling that imposter syndrome, right? You're probably now managing alongside other managers or directors who've been doing the role for a long time. Have confidence in yourself. You got this job, you were promoted into this role for a reason. So always go back to that. These are the reasons why I got into this role, and why leadership trusted me in it. And so remind yourself that, you're going to get better at this every day. You're going to have more swings and misses than you are lands, unfortunately, but it's just repetition of trying to do the right thing all the time. And you're not going to, you are going to mess up, but give yourself that grace. And I think your team will also appreciate, knowing that you don't have all the answers, and that you are being transparent with them in that. And don't be afraid to ask for help. We've all been there. We've all been new managers before. It is a really unrealistic expectation to think you are going to be amazing out the gate. It's kind of like a little baby deer come out the woods. You're going to be struggling a little bit, and that's okay. And that's just part of the process.
And I love the trust in your team. And I'll just add to that. Your team might not execute the same way as you. They're individuals with their own individual style, and learning to let go of getting things done the way you would do them is a big lesson for a lot of new managers, and you'll get through that phase.
Perfect. So I know we are towards the close of the session. Probably I would like one of you to probably share one of your biggest lesson as first-time managers.
I can answer that. I'll just say, and I've heard it mentioned kind of briefly today as well, and that is finding those people that can be mentors for you, people that you admire, and ask for help and run a situation by them. Don't feel like you're trying to prove yourself. I must do all this on my own. It's okay. Find those people you can say, here's my situation. What would you do? Listen to their advice and use that as a data point, not the only data point, but a data point to help you. And the more you find like that I think Kelly called it in the last session, your board of directors, right? The more you'll be able to understand other people's perspectives and points of view and ask for that help.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Wendy. So that brings us to the end of this session of Leadership Dilemma. So thank you everyone for participating, and thank you especially Maria, Karsten, and Wendy for your insights. Solid lessons, loved it. So even though this is the end of the session, folks, we can continue the conversations on the PSE Slack event channel as well. So feel free to shoot questions there. There's a whole community that's ready to come and discuss and help you out, right? So that would be all, folks. Cheers. Thank you. Bye-bye.